Live from Tel Aviv is the former president of the Zionist Federation of Australia. Very good morning to you. Being from Australia and seeing these protests that have taken place, were you aware of them, especially the pro-Palestinian ones by the Sydney Opera House a few nights ago?
I wasn't aware of them before they occurred, but I've seen the footage and I was pretty disgusted by it, to be honest. I'm sitting here in Tel Aviv now, talking to friends, family, my son who's mobilised with his unit in the Israeli army to try and defend the country from these horrific acts of violence, and to see people chanting despicable anti-Semitic comments about slogans about Jews and the state of Israel and Palestine was shocking to me.
Mm. As you said, your son now on the way, and we're just taking these live pictures that are coming to us from Ashkelon at the moment, where rockets are continuing to be fired this evening. Philip, how do you feel about your son?
Obviously, we're concerned. We're worried about the situation he's in, but he's now a reservist in the Israeli army, but he served a full term as a professional soldier, and this is what he trained for. We're very, very proud of what he's doing in trying to defend the people of Israel from this horrific terrorism and violence. But of course, we are concerned. I mean, today we took our twin granddaughters, my wife and I, for a walk to the park. We were halfway through the walk, the sirens went off. We went running to an apartment building down the bottom of the stairs to a shelter, pretty hairy, to be honest, and spent 10, 15 minutes there waiting for the sirens to stop and the booms to stop as they intercepted the missiles coming into Tel Aviv. That's just not acceptable.
Philip, is there an expectation that there'll be a ground invasion in the coming days or weeks? Probably more so the coming days. Is that how you're feeling about things when you've got, your son, a reservist, some 330,000 of them on standby at the moment?
Well, obviously I'm not in the Israeli military. I'm not an expert on defence and military issues. There's a lot of talk about it on the streets and with our friends and family, and it may very well happen. It's obviously a tactical question, because once ground troops go in, the fighting gets much more complicated and much more direct and intimate in a sense, and it's a lot more dangerous. So we're obviously watching it very carefully. There is a lot of speculation, but we don't have any inside information as to whether that's going to happen or not. Obviously, the Prime Minister, Minister of Defence and the Chief of Staff will have to make that decision.
And your son he's got family as well. I mean, not just yourself, but he's got kids. He's got his own family. I mean, it's tense stuff if that decision comes that he's got to go into what would be a very violent and complex situation.
Absolutely. He's got 3 very young children, twins who are under 2.5, and now a son who's just born 3 weeks ago, which is why we came to Israel to celebrate that event. Of course, they're all very concerned about that possibility, and also the possibility of the northern front opening with Hezbollah from Lebanon, which would create all sorts of further strategic and defence and security complexities for Israel.
Yeah, and Joe Biden, he was on giving a speech to the nation just about an hour ago, Philip, and he mentioned that 14 Americans had been victims in all of this so far. This comes on a day when the first Australian victim had been identified, a 66-year-old grandmother who was born in Sydney. Goes to show that, it doesn't just affect Israel. This affects many countries around the world.
Absolutely. Whatever happens in the Middle East affects a lot of the world. We know that. It's, in a sense, the crucible of a lot of activity around the world. But of course, Israel is a country with immigrants from all over the world, a melting pot, a very successful melting pot. So yes, there are people who've come from scores of countries to settle in Israel, and of course there are many tourists and visitors and people who work in Israel from other countries, and they get caught up in this terrible violence.
That's Philip Chester coming to us live from Tel Aviv. Philip Chester, the former president of the Zionist Federation of Australia. Thanks so much for your time, Philip.